Good morning, ladies. How are you? I haven't seen you all for a while. I've spoken to several of you since our last, I guess, soiree get together. And I want to commend all the ladies who've called in for 101s or stopped by the house for 101s. I love it. It means that you're committed to progress. And the door is still open for any other of you that I haven't spoken to since our last session. But I thought it's so difficult for us all to get together with our busy schedules and calendars and other commitments. And I thought, well, why don't I just tape our next session and just send it out all to you so you guys can watch and listen at your leisure. You know that when I started this, the most important thing that I said to everyone was that you just make progress. There wasn't some specific timeline for everyone, but what we were trying to do was we were trying to not stay stuck. And that was the goal of this whole seminar and changing way of life thing. It was about getting past personal barriers and personal stagnation and growing every single day and taking a few steps forward. So I'm sitting here today in my office. I got my morning cup of coffee that gets me going. My husband is out of town, so it gives me some time to talk freely without him hearing what I'm talking about with my girls. So I thought I'd just go ahead and tape something. I've had a lot of things on my mind recently that I wanted to share with all of you, and I was just kind of saving them up to a time when I thought I would meet up with you all, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. So I thought, why don't I go ahead and just share with you some of my thoughts, especially when it comes to this whole thing we're involved in with dating and the road to marriage or possibly marriage or relationships and all of those good things. You know, I know we've all been caught up in this election cycle. I mean, it's been 18 months and it's just been absolutely crazy. I know some of you are disappointed at the outcome of the election. Maybe some of you are happy about it. And I know some of you are probably trying to come up with strategies and ways of coping with maybe the election not turning out the way you would want it to be and how your life looks going forward. And I know that produces a lot of fear in people. I've seen it on TV. I've been reading the blogs on the news. Everybody is just completely afraid, and I understand it because whenever you're going into an area that you don't quite know everything, it's quite scary and you don't know how your life is going to change or what type of things you're going to be faced with. And that produces a lot of fear. And it actually reminded me of this whole relationship journey that we're on, getting to know someone new that you don't know about, scared to take a chance, scared of what the outcome might be, scared of what might happen in that relationship. And a lot of times what we do is we then either resist the change or we go into the change with such a negative point of view that it really doesn't allow us to enjoy some of the good things about the journey. And, I thought about this election cycle and I said, it was just too long. 18 months learning about Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. At the end of 18 months, you don't like a lot about either candidate. And I think this happens no matter who would run for president. And that's the same thing with dating. That's why all of you know, especially if you've called in, and we've had one-on-ones or we've met personally, that my motto for 2016 was completely about, you don't need to date long. You need to get married. You need to not date for 3 and 4 years because that's too long. The longer you date someone, the longer you scrutinize them, the more time you're going to have to find reasons why you don't want to marry that person. And the same thing with the guy. The longer he dates you, he's going to find more things about you. That's what we saw in this election, and that kind of what mimics in relationships. What you want to do is, like I mentioned before, you need to get married in your honeymoon stage. You need to know the basic things about a person. You need to have your top 5. And then the rest of the things, you're right, it will unfold in marriage. And you will find out more. And you will probably find out some things that you don't like. But at that point in time, you will have a stronger relationship, a stronger marriage. Because one, you've committed to each other. before the eyes of God, or whatever way you want to do it, and you'll have a blessing and a covenant and a strength to your marriage that will help you overcome some of those things that you'll be experiencing in the relationship. When you're trying to go through those types of things in a dating environment, it's just too difficult. So the thing I'm trying to say is it's inevitable that you're going to learn these things about a person. It's inevitable that they'll learn some things about you that they don't like. But it's when those things are discovered that's the most important, because you have to learn them once your love for that person has grown better, and his for you and yours for him. And that's why, I still, to this day, I'm still through it. I still confess that after a year of dating a person, you need to have the commitment that you're going to get married. And by that second year, you need to have done it. Any time past that, you seriously jeopardize the relationship going full term, or you put a lot more stress on it than it really needs to have. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but it really lessens the chances of it happening. And so you really need to seize the moment in the first year, and definitely within the next 2 years. The next year, I'm sorry. The other part about why I totally believe in sort of this, some of you might call it an accelerated plan, is that everyone has transitions in their lives. I mean, we're in the era now where no one's life today is the same that it's going to be in 6 months or 12 months. So imagine you have a girlfriend that, you haven't spoken to in 6 months or 12 months, and you call her up and you're like, hey girl, how you doing? I haven't spoken to you for 9 months. What's going on? She's going to have a whole lot probably to tell you. She's probably not going to say, oh, nothing. I'm doing the same old thing. I'm sitting here on the couch watching TV. She's probably going to tell you, oh, wow, I haven't spoken to you. Yeah, a lot has gone on. I changed jobs. I moved. My mom passed away, or my dad passed away, or my girlfriend is sick. She's got cancer, or I got laid off from my job. I'm looking for a job, or I got a new job. These are all life transitions. And we all know that when people go through transitions, they're some of the most stressful times of our lives. And when you start to date a guy for a year or 2 years, that means you're going to be with him doing some transitions. And sometimes transitions aren't sexy. They're not cute. They're not easy to go through. So here you are in a relationship with a person with no commitment, but you're trying to go through these transitions with him, or he's trying to go through them with you. And that is very difficult to do with all the other pressures that we have on ourselves out here in the world. So you really need the covenant, you need the commitment of marriage to help you go through these transitions. Long ago when our lives were kind of the same and we didn't do much, and, we stayed at the same job for 30 or 40 years, or we lived in the same house for 20 years, or we didn't move from a city to city, and all of our friends, were right down the street from us. Maybe our lives were a bit more stable, a bit more like, just level like this. And so maybe there wasn't as much, ebb and flow, peaks and valleys to it. But that's not the case in our lives anymore. And as a result, it changes the dynamics of relationships. What ends up happening is your relationship can be just like the stock market. It can be up, it can be down, it can be up. And so what happens is you have to do the things you need to do to shore it up. So that way, when those valleys come, you are strong enough and stable enough that you can weather the storm. And when you're just dating someone and you haven't committed to them, and you haven't been strengthening your relationship, and you're just kind of coasting and doing status quo, when that dip comes, when that transition comes, whether it be a death in his family of someone that's close to him, or one in yours, or a change in jobs, or a change in salary, or a change where he lives, now your relationship isn't strong enough to weather that. So all of this is just trying to get you guys to understand some of the reasoning behind why I tell everyone that marriage and marrying someone that you meet should be done more swiftly than what we might have been thinking about in the past. So I don't know where all of you are. I know I've spoken to some of you. Some of you have had false starts. And I say a false start is when, at least since our last meeting, you at least went out on a date or two. You might have even engaged in a quick relationship with someone that maybe lasted a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month. And I call those false starts. But that's still progress, because if when we met before you weren't dating at all and now at least you're starting to engage, then that's all positive. So I commend you guys all for that. And now we want to turn those false starts into better, more clean starts. And some of you I've spoken to, you've gone a bit further. You're actually in relationships, and you've been in these relationships now for several months. And so you're in a different phase. And so I commend all of you, because you also might be facing a few challenges right now that you've been dating someone for 4 months or 5 months, because you're starting to come around towards the end of a honeymoon period, which is typically, typically maybe between 6 to 8 months, which is the honeymoon period. So you're somewhere maybe in the middle or towards the end. So I also want to speak to you all. For those of you who have had the other one and you haven't at all been on a date, and you haven't even had a false start, then I would suggest you schedule a one-on-one with me as soon as possible, so that we can talk more in depth one-on-one about how to get you back into the game, to really go into what is causing it, what's causing you not be able to at least line up at the plate and get ready to swing the bat. So we do want to talk about that, but I'm here for everyone at any stage at this point. That's why I think I've been doing a lot more one-on-ones, because people are sort of progressing through their personal development at different paces. So it may be easier in some respects to have more one-on-ones. So feel free to email me, call me, set me up an appointment, come by, have a cup of coffee, have a glass of wine, or whatever the case may be, and I can do as much as I can to help you. And if you remember what I said, I'm on this journey with you. I'm going through things myself in my own marriage. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm trying to strengthen my marriage. So this is just something that we do as women, for if we want to have a full and complete life with not just friends and family, but with husbands and spouses that we can, grow old together with and enjoy new things in life with. Yesterday I also was reminded, I have all these little things that, that I draw correlations to relationships with. It's kind of how I see life. I never see life as just an anomaly. When something happens, I always draw parallels to other things in my life, because for me, it helps me understand things and helps me put things in perspective. And sometimes when I think something is too isolated or too unique, it can freak a person out, because they can think, wow, I've never dealt with this before. It's kind of like, if any of you guys study the Bible, one of the things they talk about is, how do you make the Bible relevant to your life today? All the stories in the Bible were written thousands of years ago, but how do you take the stories of the Bible and say, oh, I can apply that right here today, just how I'm living my life today. And that's how you make the Bible come alive. And I say that in any day life, you have to draw parallels to things that you see, because it helps you understand what you're going through here and now. So the parallel that I'm going to draw today is basically off of a television show that I don't know if any of you have ever seen it. It's called Lucky Dog. And it comes on Saturdays, and it comes on early. So those of you who sleep in, you probably have never seen it. But I think it's like on Channel 2 or Channel 4. But it's called Lucky Dog, and it's about a dog trainer who gets a dog from a shelter and sort of prepares this dog for this family. So it's called Lucky Dog because it's like, look at this dog. He's so lucky because he's going to get like this brand new family. And then the family is so lucky because they're going to get like this great dog. So the way it starts off is what the dog trainer does. He's getting all these dogs from a shelter. So he goes around to different shelters. I think it's filmed here in LA. But before he even goes to the shelter to get a dog, he first goes to the family who the dog is for. So he goes to the family, and he sits down with them. He goes to their house. He looks at the environment that the dog is going to live in, and he actually starts to interview the dog. And the dog. He actually starts interviewing the family, and he finds out, what the family wants in a dog. Like, what type of dog do you want? Where's the dog going to live? Like, what type of activities do you want to go and share with the dog? So the family stars, the last show I saw, it was a gentleman. He says, well, I like to run, so I want a dog that likes to run, so that way I can see him going running with me. Then another family says, well, we like to go on road trips and we like to travel, so we want to have a dog that doesn't get car sick, because we like to really hit the road in our RV and we don't want the dog to get car sick. So the trainer, sits there and he interviews him. I said, wow, this is just like us, like our group, and developing our top 5. When he's sitting there and he's asking these families what they want in a dog, he's interviewing them, asking what are the things that like are most important to you. And hey, I don't want to disparage men and say that I'm thinking like all men are dogs. So that's one thing you have to get over. That's not what I'm saying. I know that's like a phrase out there in the world, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm just drawing the boundaries. Drawing the parallels between, what we're doing in dating with what this guy is doing when he's trying to find the perfect dog for this family. And every family is different. So anyway, after he interviews the family and he gets their needs, which for us is our top 5. So when we sat down and we developed our top 5, it's the same way this man sits down and talks to the families and figures out what they want. So after he does their top 5, he then goes to the shelter. And as you know, if you've ever been to a dog shelter, there's tons of dogs there. He goes around to each of the kennels and he starts looking at the various dogs. And he'll get into the cage with the dog for a little bit to see, like, what's the temperament of this dog, because I'm going to have to train this dog to be perfect for this family. He recognizes that none of the dogs in the kennel are already trained for this family. He just says, I'm going to look for the characteristics that make this dog trainable, so this dog will be perfect for this family. So it's the same thing I talk about with all of you, in that all men need to be trained. They all need to be trained. Don't share this video with men, because they'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe she's talking about men like that. But all men need to be trained. If you believe that you're just going to get a man who's all trained for you, forget about it. It's not going to happen. So once he finds a dog in the kennel, and it's really like just after a brief encounter, it's not like he's goes, whatever, it's for television, but it's the same thing I say with all of you, is that you just got to go out on dates. You just gotta, once you know what you want and you get a guy, you got to start going out on dates. So he picks a dog. He then takes the dog home and he starts doing a few tests on the dog. So he starts to see what is the dog's potential to be trained in certain areas. So like one family, for instance, the guy was somewhat handicapped and disabled. So he was saying, I like to take my dog out with me, but I have an SUV. And so the dog has to be able to jump up into the back of the SUV. And so, the dog trainer was trying to find a dog for this particular man. So when he brought the dog home from the shelter, the first thing he did was, I have to see if this dog has the potential to be able to jump. Like, I don't know how high this dog can jump. I don't know if the dog can jump. But he said, I have to be able to see, can this dog even jump? So he starts to create like this little, like you do the limbo and you go under the pole and everything. So he creates that sort of same apparatus for the dog. But first he has it real low. And he says, let me see if the dog can jump over this. So he goes, oh, wow, the dog did that. Then he raises the bar up a little bit. He says, oh, let me see if this dog will be able to jump over this. And he goes, oh, wow, he can do that. Then he keeps raising it because he knows how high the back seat of an SUV is. So he says, now let me see if he'll be able to jump this high. And the dog like clears the bar. So he's like, oh, wow, this dog definitely has the potential to be a good dog for this man because he has a natural ability to be able to jump. So, that's the same thing, and I have my parallels, the same thing in regards to what I've been talking to you guys about, and that is when you're out on the date, what you're really trying to do is you're trying to figure out, does this man have the potential to meet my top five? I mean, that's the sole point of dating. If you're going out on dates with guys and you're not in a quest to figure out whether or not this guy can meet your top five, then you're just like wasting your time. You're just out for a chicken dinner or, some chicken Alfredo or whatever. I mean, when this dog trainer takes the dog home, he's not testing the dog on things that the owner doesn't care about. He's trying to figure out, is this dog going to have the top things that this owner wants? And the owner doesn't have a list of 100 things. He has a list of maybe 5 or 6 things, which is basically what our top 5 is. So that's what dating is about. It's about you figuring out, does this guy meet these criteria? So if you're on dates and you're doing other things other than evaluating this guy on your top 5, then you're wasting a lot of time, and you really should be concentrated on what's more important to you, not a whole lot of other, things that are not your part of your top 5. So let me look at my notes, because I did write a few things down. I want to make sure I hit them all, because I was brain dumping when I had these thoughts. I was like, oh, I'm going to talk about this, I'm going to talk about that, I'm going to talk about this. So, okay. So then the last step is, once the dog trainer starts to see that the dog has potential, he starts to train the dog in all of the different areas that the owner said that he wants. Okay. Now remember, at this point in time, the dog has not even met this family. He didn't bring the dog home to the family and be like, oh, hey, do you like this dog? And they go, yeah, we like the dog. We like the dog. We like the dog. And then he takes the dog back and then trains the dog. He doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. You know why he doesn't do that? I think it's because whenever you bring a little dog home, a little puppy, whether it's not even a puppy, whether it's a dog or whatever else, you start to fall in love with, oh, look at the dog. I like his color. He's so sweet. He's so that. And then that dog's in your house like, this dog is badass. He don't know how to do anything I like. He doesn't do anything. So what this man does is he doesn't even bring the dog to the family until he's for certain that this dog is trainable and that he can meet the top 5 of this family. So after the trainer trains the dog in the areas that he wants, that is when he brings the dog home and he introduces the dog to the family. And then what he does is he starts showing the family, hey, look at all the things that this dog can do. And the family's like, oh my God, this is so perfect for our life. This fits perfectly into our family. This dog is going to fit perfectly into our lives and our families, and it's going to be great. I'm sure there's a whole lot of other things those dogs need training on. But what they have is they have a dog now that satisfies the most important things to them. And so that goes back to why I tell you, you have to have very solid top 5, and you have to stick to that, and you can't get sidetracked by other things. So that's my parallel. That's my whole seminar for the thing. And we're just going to talk about more of that through this time, about trying to determine if you have the skill sets of this dog trainer, because the truth of the matter is you don't have a dog trainer. You're not in an arranged marriage where you're going to have someone go out and pick a guy out for you, and then your friends or your family are going to, make sure he has all the qualities, and then we're going to bring the dog home to you and you're going to marry. That's what an arranged marriage is. Well, you can have that if you want to. Possibly you can, but most of us don't want to do that, and we're not going to do that, which means you have to do all the roles in this movie, this lucky dog movie. You have to be the client who knows what you want. Then you have to be the dog trainer to go out and search for the dog or be open to the dog. Then you have to be the one who evaluates whether the dog can accomplish or be the top 5. Then you have to welcome the dog into your home, into your life, and love the dog. even though you know that he may have other things that you don't like or is missing, but he does have the main things that you want. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about. Now, a lot of the success of the relationship in the beginning in you accepting a dog, because remember, you are the prize, okay? You are the prize. You are the one that's doing the evaluating. You're the one that says yes or no. You're not auditioning for the guy. The guy is auditioning for you. So you're the prize. So you get to be the one to say yay or nay or what have you. But in order for you to be successful, you have to be able to train. You have to be able to evaluate. And so you have to determine whether or not you have the skills to do this. And if you don't have the skills, then you need to get better at it. I have spoken with a few women. I'm not going to mention names. Some of you already know because of the conversations I've had with you. And I've told you that your training skills are lacking. They're really, really poor. Okay. And I know a lot of women may have excuses for that, whatever they may be. But the reality of it is if you do not get better at choosing, and if you do not get better at training, okay, you're just going to have a wild ass dog that goes around jumping on all the furniture, pissing in the house, pooping in the house, and then you're going to get mad and you're going to be like, well, I need to rehome this dog because this dog doesn't know how to do anything. I can't have this dog. I got to find a new owner for this dog. This is what a lot of women do with men. They get the men, and the men are jumping up on the couch. They're pooping in the house, they're peeing everywhere, and you don't want to deal with it. So you decide, you know what, I'm going to rehome the dog. I'm going to I'm going to break up with him and let him go. And you go back out, and then you decide, I'm just going to wait until I get another dog that's more trained than this dog. And that's what you keep doing. You just keep trading and trading and trading and trading and trading and trading and trading because you really don't want to do any of the work. Well, that isn't a road that leads to happiness. So what we want to do now is, some of you, depending on where you are in this process, you might have already encountered this. You might have already encountered obstacles in training men, and you came up against your first obstacle and you either decided to give up and say, this isn't for me, then I don't need to be in a relationship because this is too difficult, or you're in the middle of it right now and it's frustrating for you. So the first thing for you to do when you're in that situation is first just to sort of breathe. Just sort of breathe and don't panic too, especially if you're in a relationship with someone you care about. Because the one thing that you need to know is that you're not alone, that your guy is not unique in whatever flaws you think he may have or that he does have. It may not even be in just a figment of your imagination. It's probably true. He probably does have those flaws. But the thing that you have to remember is you're not alone. And so when you see other successful relationships, you can't assume or think that those relationships are successful because those men didn't have the flaws that your man has. Oh yeah, they did. And some of them still have them. But what they're doing is they've either gotten rid of them in marriage, or they've made them better, or they're improving them, or they're whatever. So you're not alone. And just knowing that you're not alone, that alone should give you a bit more peace and allow you just to breathe and kind of work your way, through this. So let's go over a little bit about training, some more specifics about it, so that you can learn. First thing is you can evaluate yourself and figure out, are you a good trainer or not? And therefore, you need to get better at that. And also, what type of success or failures have you had in the training process, and what do you need to change about yourself so that when you enter into the next relationship, you will be a little bit more adept at this. You have to learn how to do it. So it's not really like an optional thing. You have to learn how to do it. So the first thing that I say that you have to learn about your guy or any guy you're dating is similar to the dog trainer when he goes to the kennel. And that is knowing what type of dog you have. Okay, remember the metaphor, the parallel is the dog is the man. So not in a derogatory way, because like I told you, I love dogs. They're actually like my favorite pet. So but what I recognize is that there are different breeds of dogs. Okay, and we all know that. There are Labradors, there's poodles, there's pit bulls, there's terriers, there's, the little hot dog dogs, there's little dogs that bite all the time, the chihuahuas and the cute little fluffy dogs, whatever they're called. I don't know, Pekingese or something. I don't know. I forget. But some dogs are more gentle than others. Some dogs are high strung. They love to run. They love water. So if you've ever bought a dog for yourself, you've probably considered some of these things, because you're like, well, I can't have that type of dog because that dog needs a big yard. He needs a yard to run around in. I need a dog who can survive in a 1-bedroom apartment or a 2-bedroom apartment. Or I need a dog who, can fit in my car. Those dogs are way too big for my car. Or you learn about their breed. I don't want a dog who's prone to aggressiveness because I have young kids. So, now some of the myths people have about dogs is that, well, dogs are trained to be mean, that all dogs are not mean. They talk about how pit bulls get bad raps. And I had a girlfriend who had a pit bull, and let me tell you, that dog was so gentle. Okay, so I understand those types of things. But there is also something about dog breeds, which is truth, because it's the DNA science behind it. Some of them are prone and have natural instincts. There's dogs that are natural hunters. So you can't train a dog that doesn't have the natural hunting instinct in him to be a hunter or a shepherd dog. A lot of these dogs, it's the DNA of them. And it's the same way with men. I mean, a lot of men have DNA within them that makes them a certain type of man. There are men whose DNA already, so they're predetermined to have maybe a more level of aggressiveness. Now, some of you may not like this type of conversation, but I've always told you my thoughts and my views are not always going to be orthodox. And when I say these things, it's not to talk about someone or put someone down or say one guy is better than the other, because that's not the point at all. The point of the matter is really knowing what you're dealing with. So then that way you can apply the correct techniques to that dog or to that man, because techniques you may use with a gentle dog may not be the same techniques you learn with a dog who is more aggressive or who has a stronger personality. And it's the same thing with men. Some men have stronger personalities than other men. Now, these stronger personalities could be their natural personalities, or they could have developed over the course of years because it went untamed for so many years in past relationships. So by the time you meet him, you feel like, wow, he's completely out of control, way outside of your comfort zone, because he has habits or personality traits that I'm not used to. He yells more than I'm used to someone yelling, or he curses more, or he gets angry more, or all of these types of things. And so what you want to do is you just want to run for the hills, because you're like, oh, I don't want to train this dog. This is a pit bull. I don't want a pit bull. I want a little fluffy dog that just sits on my lap. But yet this same guy who you feel may have road rage, or he yells, or he talks loud, or he curses, or whatever the case, he has everything else that you liked. He has all your top 5, but he has these rough edges to him. So you then take all your top 5 and say, yeah, he's got my top 5, but he's got these things over here, so I'm going to get rid of him. And I'm saying, no, that's not the case at all. I'm saying that's now when your training comes in. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to a dog park, or you didn't even really need to go to a dog park. You could just walk down the street. And you'll see different dogs on different types of leashes. You'll see some dogs, they be on a little thin leash that looks like like a string from a balloon, And then you'll see other dogs, they got the choke collar on, it's a big old thick leash, it's a chain on their neck, and they may have a muzzle on their mouth, and you think, wow, that must mean that dog is like mean, why are they got that many chains on that dog? Well, maybe that owner is in the training process of that dog. Maybe that dog has shown a temperament that the owner is trying to break the dog of, and maybe you don't know where the relationship with the owner and that dog is. And it's the same thing with men. I mean, when you've gotten through the top 5 with a guy and now you're starting to learn about what is the breed of my man, you have to determine what the appropriate leash is for that guy. You can't just say, well, I don't really want to have to take my dog for a walk when he wants to use the bathroom. I just want to be able to open up my door, the dog goes out, does his business, and then comes back. I don't want to have to worry about the dog running off. I don't want to have to worry about the dog seeing another dog and running after another dog or getting in a fight with another dog. Well, that's great. I mean, that's kind of lazy that, you can just sit in the house, open up your door, your dog goes, does his business, runs around the neighborhood, and then comes right back and walks in the house and sits on the floor next to you. But I mean, the truth of the matter is that's like not even, too common or realistic. And that's like just laziness. So you have to determine what type of dog breed do you have and what type of leash initially that your man is going to need. Is he going to need a heavier hand to sort of, help smooth out some of those things? And this goes on throughout the relationship, So in the beginning, when you're doing your top 5, if you remember, what I told everybody was you have to not feel like you have to train the dog before you marry him, okay? You just have to figure out, is he trainable? Like, you just need to test him out on a few things and say, okay, I'm going to start with 1 or 2 things that I see he does that I don't like. Okay, you probably got 100 things that you see that he doesn't like. Okay, but you don't try and get through all 100 things before you marry this guy, because then you're going to be like Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. It's going to be 3 years, and by then he ain't going to want to marry you. You're not going to want to marry him because he's going to be sick of you trying to train him, and he's going to get disinterested, and you're going to get frustrated, and you're not going to want to marry him. But you should test out 1 or 2 things. So you have your top 5. Those are non-negotiables. Then you have to see, is the guy trainable? Okay, so you only pick out 1, no more than 2 things, and you have to work through those things to see if in fact, and this is what goes on in that year, those 1 or 2 things is what you do. Now, if you're turning the 1 or 2 things into 5 things and then 10 things and then 15 things and 20 things, you're doing way too much. You're doing way too much. Okay, you only really should be doing a couple of things. Okay, and you want to see, how is he able to adjust to my needs or my wants? He's been living his life a certain way. He hasn't had to adjust these things because he hasn't had a need to. Okay, now that you're in his life, you have to make known what are those 1 or 2 things that you're going to test him out on. Okay, and you have to see how he adjusts. Now, for him to adjust, I talked to you about this before, he has to love you. Okay, if he doesn't love you, he's not going to adjust. Okay, and if once he loves you, then you have to see if he's willing to adjust and if he's able to adjust. That's all you're doing. So, but you have to know what type of man you're with. Okay, because a lot of people, they have a pit bull, but they got a thin leash. And then they're wondering why the pit bull's acting crazy. And I don't want anybody to get mad because I'm talking about pit bulls. I'm just using that because of the stereotype, which may or may not be true. But I ain't trying to be politically correct here. But that's the point I'm making. Or some of you, how crazy would it look if you had a little chihuahua and you had like this big old thick chain on the chihuahua with a muzzle? People will look at you crazy then too. Like, Why she got that big old chain on that little chihuahua? So the point is, you have to appropriately adjust and interact with your guy based on his initial personality that he's displaying. Okay? And you have to do that in a loving and kind way, not meeting him with the same sort of aggression if he is being a bit aggressive, but in a loving and kind way. Because remember, your whole purpose is just to see if he's trainable. It's not to fix everything about him. It's just to determine whether or not that he's trainable. The reason for all this is because, it's very important that you start this right away once you've worked through and realize he has your top 5. Because the longer that you're with a guy and you don't start this sort of training process, the more out of control or more liberties the man will start to take. Once you completely lose control of him in the relationship in the beginning, for him not knowing what you want, it's very difficult to dial that back. It's very difficult then to come back and reestablish the order, because in a lot of ways you sort of lost a little bit of the respect that the man might have for you. So it's just like, I don't know if you've ever, remember the other show was called The Dog Whisperer, with the guy who they go into a house and the dog is like freaking out of control in the house. The dog's like taking over the entire house. He's doing everything and the family like cannot control the dog. So at that point in time, the whisperer, I forget the guy's name, he actually just removes the dog from the house completely. Like, he doesn't even try and train the dog while the dog is still living at the house with the family. He like takes the dog to some camp. It's like a detox camp. It's like the dog whisperer. If you're in a relationship with a guy and you've just allowed him to do whatever in the house, then what happens is, now you want to change because you realize you can't live like this. You can't live with this man with all of these bad behaviors. You freaking need a dog whisperer. You're going to have to do something very, very shocking to get his attention again. And a lot of times that means, putting the dog out. In terms of like relationship, that means putting the man out, cutting him loose. But here's the problem. Now you've cut loose a man who had your top 5. Who was a good man, but now you've put him out because of this really bad behavior. If he really loves you, maybe he'll come back, but the better solution, he'll come back and you guys can start over again, but the better solution is not to let it get to that point, not to let it to get to that breaking point where now you got to put him out. But that's what a lot of happens to a lot of women. It just gets so out of control that then the next thing they know, I got to put this dog out. I want him out of my life because he's freaking out of control. But remember, this was the same guy who, when you started with him, he had all of your top 5. So the change doesn't necessarily need to come from him first. The change has to come from you first. So in the dog whisperer, what he does is he removes the dog from the house. He takes the dog to a completely new environment. He retrains the dog. They recently got in trouble because I guess he did some things that they felt was not humane or whatever. I don't know. But anyway, he employs and deploys or whatever, some techniques to really get the dog in order. Then he brings the dog back to the family, but he tells the family, listen, he then trains the family. This is what you have to do. You can't let the dog pull away from you when you're walking. When he does that, you need to correct the dog. You need to do this. You need to do that. He emphasizes that whatever I've done to the dog, it's only going to work unless you continue and do the same thing and that you stay consistent. If you go back to your old ways, the dog is going to go back to his old ways. So I know a lot of you right now are saying, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work. I don't want to do this. Well, here's the thing. You do that probably in every other aspect of your life. If you have a real dog, you've probably done it. Because I'm sure you don't want no dog going crazy in your life. You've probably done it. If you have children, you've probably already done it in some ways too before. If you are a manager and you have employees, you've probably already done it. Drawing boundaries. Um, you know, some employees may have more leeway than other employees. Some children may have more privileges than other children because they're different. So you're already doing this in your life. So you need to transfer those skills over into your relationship. Now, I talk to a lot of women, and when I see them not really employing any training techniques with their men, I just sit back and I wonder, I'm like, why aren't they doing this? Why are they just letting the men just do this, but yet they're unhappy and they're complaining? And I don't know, I don't want to speak to you around, but what I found was because the women don't want to be rejected. They think that if I just let the guy keep doing this, then he will like me and then he won't reject me. And in the short term, that may be true, but in the long term, it doesn't work. And in the long term, you won't be happy because you can put up with it for a little while, but you're not going to be able to put up with it in the long run. So you shouldn't even, it's just like anything else. You shouldn't even wait till you get to your breaking point to start, evaluating whether the man is trainable. Once you start seeing behaviors that are not conducive to the life that you want, you have to immediately start figuring out, is this guy trainable? Because your whole marriage will be filled with, on both ends, you adjusting to him and him adjusting to you. And so if you have a person who isn't capable of making adjustments, then you're going to have a really hard time in your marriage. And you're going to have a hard time sustaining a relationship. So that's the other thing. Now I want to get to somewhat methods for training, because that also has come up in some of my one-on-ones, and it's also something that I've seen, and I'll always just keep going back to the dog trainers, the Lucky Dog Show, and even the Dog Whisperer. And what you'll notice is when they're training when they're training a dog, they have sort of like a carrot stick and a treat mechanism. So when the dog models a behavior that they like, they actually give the dog a treat. So if any person says you shouldn't hit a dog, just like a child, or whatever, you shouldn't hit a dog, but what they do is they reward the good behavior, and then the bad behavior goes unrewarded. Okay. And a lot of women, what we do is we do the opposite. We see the bad behavior and we yell, we scream, we curse, we do all this. And then the good behavior doesn't get any fanfare at all. It doesn't get any fanfare. So one of the things that I always try and do, and I don't always do it right in my marriage, I make a lot of mistakes. So a lot of the things that I share with you guys are mistakes I've already made in my marriage. And so hopefully some of the things that I say will help you from making some of the same mistakes as well. But I believe that a lot of men respond well to the carrot method. You hear about the carrot and the stick. The carrot, you dangle the carrot, and when it's just like the treat for the dog, when he does something, you treat him. So when you see your guy model a behavior that you really, really like, you should lather on the praise. You should give him a treat, whatever treat is for him. You should know your guy by now. What is it that he likes? And whether it's words of praise, a kiss, maybe it's a little sex, whatever it is, you need to learn what the carrot is for your man, which is what dangles the carrot, but you also need to learn what the reward is. And then what the man learns is, wow, if I do this, I get a treat. If I hit that carrot mark, then everything is good. You can't always just come with a stick, and be ready to hit him over the head when he's done something wrong, because he is going to do things wrong, and your weapon can't always be your stick. You have to have a carrot, and you also have to have a treat. So you have to determine whether or not you're a good trainer. And I don't know if you've had any experience, but if you have, in those areas I mentioned, like either with a real dog or with kids or with employees, how successful were you? These are some things you have to ask yourself. Like, is your child like really, really bad? Or were you successful in changing some bad behaviors of your child that you raised? I know it's hard to evaluate ourselves, but you have to do this because that will give you insight on whether or not you need to hone up on your skills for training. How about your employees that you supervise? How do they speak of you? Are you good at balancing the carrot, the reward, and the stick? Now, I wasn't really good with the sweet carrot when I first started. And that's actually what made me a really horrible manager, in that I was a stick carrier. I was just like, I don't have time for this. I saw something I didn't like. I'm gonna whip out the stick. And it didn't really make well for me as a manager. And that's why I say I failed at it as a manager. And as you guys all know, I don't have any kids because I had very low tolerance, and as a result, it didn't make me want to have kids. So these were all things with me and then I, of course, as you guys know, I had years and years of relationships that, although I had fun or whatever, they really didn't progress. They didn't elevate because of the fact that I really wasn't good at molding, correcting in a way that's sustainable, that doesn't, make the relationship bad. So I really had to learn how to train and I had a dog once. And let me tell you, my dog, she was out of control. I'm telling you, my dog, she was so wonderful and beautiful, and I loved her to death. But there were times where she just did not listen to me. She really just did not listen to me. And I was like, why isn't this dog listening? And she would be also a source of my frustration, but I loved her to death. And I wish I had been better at it, because I think there was so many more things we probably could have enjoyed together. She passed away. I had her for 12 years. She passed away, but I never had the stamina to really train her in some of the other areas. So as a result, there were some things with her that I couldn't really just enjoy with her. I used to go to dog parks with her, and then she started having behavior at the dog park. Oh wow, we can't go to the dog park anymore. And I was like, I like going to the dog park. I thought it would be fun, but we couldn't go there anymore. So I look back now, this was all before I kind of went through my transformation. I look back now and realize that in order for me to have a successful relationship going forward, I too had to learn some better training techniques so that I can kind of use those in my relationship. And so that's what I do now. I'm still developing them, but I'm completely sold on the importance of them. So you guys definitely have to do that. So let me look at my notes again. I just want to make sure. Okay. This is very important. When you start to do sort of the carrot and the cake, the carrot's the dangle, the cake or the stick. A lot of women, what they use as their punishment for the men is sex. Wrong. It's like the last punishment you want to use on a guy. Okay? Every time you want to correct a guy, you cannot bring out, I call sex like the top joker. Okay? It's like you're playing, I don't know if you guys ever played spades or something like that. Like the joker is the top card. You don't just play the joker any old time or every time. And first of all, there's only one joker in the whole deck of 52 cards. There's a low joker and there's a high joker. Sex is the high joker to every man. It is the high joker. Okay? You cannot play that joker every time your guy does something that you don't like. You can't just, boom, boom, there's a joker. I'm not having sex with you. I'm not doing this. And then next thing you know, you're playing that joker card like every other day, every week, every other week. So next thing you know, you're not having sex with your guy, on a regular basis. And let me tell you something. That's like not feeding a dog. That's like you trying to train a dog and you say because he didn't jump over this bar, you're not going to eat dinner tonight. Okay, or you whatever. You don't do that. You should not. If you guys have a agreement in your relationship that you're not going to have sex before marriage, that's a whole nother thing. But if you guys have already feel comfortable with having sex, while you're dating or whatever, you then can't use sex as a weapon. It will have the complete opposite effect on your guy. You think it's going to be used to get him in line. It's the complete opposite. It's going to make him more, whatever he is, it's going to make him more of that. And then he's going to grow to resent you. You can't use sex as your weapon or your corrective stick. So that's the first thing I want to say, that you need to take that off of the options, and you need to come up with something else, because that is an ineffective tool and it's a bad tool. It's even with kids. I mean, you don't spank no kid with no switch. You don't, you want to correct a kid, you're going in way too much. What you do with a child or whatever else is you take away things that they like, but it's not like food. You don't tell a kid, you got a deal on your report card, so you're not going to eat until your next report card. They're going to put you in jail. So you don't do that with sex with a man. But there's other things that your kid likes. You say you can't have phone privileges. You can't do this. You can't do that. You have to come up with things like that for your guy. You have to draw boundaries, and you have to stick to your boundaries. And let's say, for example, it's something like, I don't know. I'm just trying to think. I'm trying to think of a real example with like my guy, like my husband, that I try and use. Okay, for some of you women who like to cook, maybe it's that. Maybe it's you go on a cooking strike, or you say, you know what, I'm not. And sometimes you don't even do it for too long. Maybe it'd be like, I'm not cooking dinner. Maybe it's something about you're not cooking dinner. I don't know, unless that's one of his top fives. So the thing point is you don't take away the top fives, and sex tends to be on the top five of most men. So maybe you're not looking at what the top fives are, or maybe you're not going to cook his favorite meal, or maybe, there's something that you do for him, special, maybe when you're having sex with him, and you don't do that special thing. But it's never the whole thing. I hope you guys kind of understand what I'm talking about. With me, my husband thing with me is he likes attention. He likes to be with me. He needs that closest with me. So when I'm so-called punishing him, what he'll tell me is he'll call me, and when we're like real good, I'll pick up his phone call right away. I'll be like, hey baby, how you doing, whatever. But when I'm mad at him, his phone call don't get returned for a couple of hours. And he gets it. He understands. He goes, oh, I guess you punishing me right now, huh? Because you're not picking up my phone call. It's just enough to send the message, but I'm not going to not talk to him ever again. It's just enough to send the message, hey, I'm not happy with your behavior. And if you don't change your behavior, then you're not going to get everything that you want. So you have to determine what that is, but you have to draw the boundaries, and you can't wait until you get to level 10 and now you throwing out the big joker. That's like, and after a while, it actually just becomes ineffective, because a lot of you women throw out the big joker, but then you never really break up anyway. So after a while, it loses its, threat. It doesn't even have the same power it had before. So I would just say, be careful of what weapons you choose when you're training. Make sure you're using the appropriate one. Make sure you have a few tricks in your bag, but make sure you're using the appropriate one. And I suggest that you never use sex as the weapon. Okay? I guess that's really it. I'm looking at the clock. It's been an hour. That's long enough for you guys having listened to me. So I hope that what I spoke about now will help you in the various stages that you're in, whether you are still interviewing men or still interviewing dogs, whether you started evaluating the dog, whether you're bringing the dog home, or whether you're in the training mode of the dog. I hope that some of the things I spoke about will help you. I know that I could never cover everything in these conversations. So, as always, I leave my door open for you all to call me or to schedule an appointment with me. As you know, my schedule's pretty flex, so I typically have flexibility. And I do have the opportunity to meet you on quick notices, because a lot of times when these things come up in our lives, it's not something you can wait a week or whatever to kind of hash it out with a girlfriend. So I typically am able to talk to you within that day or the next day. You can come by or whatever else. Because it's important, because sometimes that moment is very critical, and sometimes we can make the wrong decision that can really alter the course of the relationship. And so you don't want to really do anything too rash when you're filled with emotion. And typically that's what it is. You're either really upset about something the guy has done, or some behavior he's modeling, and you're feeling like you want to give up on him and you want to run. One thing I used to always say about myself was I was a runner, and that was I didn't really want to ever have conflict. So what I did was I just ran from the relationship. After, the honeymoon period, none of my relationship really lasted past a year, or a year and a half, because the honeymoon stage is over, and when it started to get rough, I would run. And I called myself a runner. And I used to think that other women were stickers, like they stayed because they were in relationships for long periods of time, but I was a runner. But what I've realized after starting these seminars and speaking with so many women is that, you know what? Actually, all women are runners. We run when we have difficulty with our men. And let me tell you the difference between the runners. One is a physical runner, which is what I was. I physically left the relationship. But a lot of women are emotional runners, which means they experience the same frustration, anger, all the emotions, fear, everything I felt. But I physically ran. But I noticed that a lot of women, they have the same feelings, but yet they stay. They've run away emotionally. They're in the relationship physically, but emotionally they're not there. And they are actually no better off than I was when I physically ran. So the key is that we are all runners. No matter who we are as women, we're all runners. And just as I had to change, you have to change. You have to learn to not emotionally run when you're in the relationship. If you're a stayer, you have to learn how to not emotionally run. You have to learn how to be fully engaged no matter what you're going through. And it's difficult and it's hard, and a lot of teams, and you need help with that. It's very difficult to do it on your own. So I'm open, my door is open, so that whenever you feel like running, give me a call, come by and see me, and I'll help you go from a runner to a stayer, and a stayer that's actually happy, not you're just staying because. Alrighty? Love you girls. Talk to you later. Bye.